Keeping a strength strong, the Dallas Cowboys are looking to bolster their offensive line in this upcoming NFL draft. We just got out of the pre-draft press conference. What were your takeaways as far as needs for the Cowboys?
You know, they've been very open, Jerry and Steven, in talking about wide receiver and offensive line as being areas of need. But they smartly, in the Tuesday press coverage here inside the Star, steered away from the concept of need. And that's wise. What Jerry Jones's big points were in regarding risk-taking and being open to flexibility is they didn't need Micah Parsons last year, or at least they didn't think they needed him. But there he was. They were trying to get a cornerback, of course, as we'll remember, high in that draft. It didn't fall that way, and instead it fell to where they could get Micah Parsons, and so they made the adjustment on the fly. They're very proud of the streamline ability that is involved in being an owner who also makes the call. There's other organizations, obviously, where you got to climb a flight of stairs and hope the guy answers the door to make big moves. Here, the guy that says yes, in at the very least a rubber stamp way, and oftentimes, obviously more than that, is sitting right next to you too. So that's beneficial when it comes time to roll the dice, take a risk, be unconventional, as Jerry said. He even used the word crazy. In regard to the idea that if the rest of the league is zigging, maybe you should zag a little bit.
Outside the box.
Outside the box.
Jerry really stressed the importance of flexibility, specifically in this year that has been kind of titled a mysterious NFL draft.
Right, and this organization has done a good job of that, especially high in the draft. They nail their first round picks, and maybe that's because they don't take gigantic risks often there. They do take their risks in the second round, and they do it all the time. They take medical risks, they take behavioral risks. I don't think we're indicting anybody's character to say that between Jalen Smith's knee, Sean Lee's health, Kelvin Joseph's background, that they have looked at second round picks and said, okay, we got to hit a home run first, sure, in the first round, but in the second round we can swing for a home run and it won't kill us if we don't hit one.
Well, speaking of great transition for me here, they did give an update on Kelvin Joseph and his availability, saying that everything that's been going on, it won't affect his availability. He's been a full participant so far here at Cowboys headquarters.
Yeah, there's 2 points that they have on Kelvin Joseph, and one is immediately as they do go through voluntary workouts, he's eligible to be here, and for the most part, my understanding is has been here. But that doesn't mean that the law or the league can't put a stop to that at some point. That's still in play. Kelvin Joseph, of course, involved, but not armed, he says to police, in a drive-by shooting that ended up, this will be a murder case for the Dallas police. Cameron Roy is a 20-year-old who was involved in a party and then an altercation and then victimized in the shooting. Their other draft-related point, and it feels a little unfortunate that somebody died, and we're still having to talk about the draft. So we do that with I hope all due sensitivity. Their point about Kelvin Joseph as it relates to the draft is his availability or non-availability will not impact what they do in the draft, and I think that's true. But it's probably especially true because they have friend of the show Anthony Brown still on the roster. Ideally, Kelvin Joseph beats out Anthony Brown. That's the way you want your second round pick to develop. But he didn't fully beat him out for most of last year. And the insurance policy of having Anthony Brown as the other cornerback alongside Trayvon Diggs, that gives you way more than knowing what's going to happen with Kelvin Joseph. That's what gives you the cushion to not have to force a cornerback pick.
Now, you know better than anybody to expect the unexpected when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, and specifically Jerry Jones. Last week he told you, hey, we can move up. But we're seeing a lot of teams around the league say we actually might move down. Where do you think the Cowboys actually lie in that statement? And what kind of athlete would they move up for?
Yeah, the good news is because so many teams want to move down, because there is a bulk of talent at the end of the first round and high in the second round, that if the Cowboys really want to do that, they won't have a problem finding a partner. The question is, what is the difference? Let's take the three offensive linemen, Penning, Green, as two guys, Zion Johnson as a third. Is there a big difference between the three of those that would cause you to need to move up, to give up a 4th round pick and a 5th round pick to move up 5 spots?
Right.
Or are those 3 guys in a bundle on the same tier? Wide receiver is another spot. Can you just sit at 24 and end up with Burks at Arkansas and be just as good as if you moved up 10 spots for one of the other guys?
Yeah.
So I think Jerry's answer to my question was more about philosophy than it was about, I got this specific guy in mind. At the same time, the Joneses on Tuesday morning said that they had a Tuesday early morning meeting in which they went through all kinds of scenarios, crazy scenarios.
Well, and especially when you're at 24, imagine all of the scenarios you have to do because you have so many teams picking before you.
Right. Jacksonville Jaguars don't have to go through as many scenarios. They're picking first. They can sit on it, and that can be the end of that. They can contemplate what phone calls they would take. But you make a great point. At 24, you're trying to be able to predict, and by Thursday afternoon you'll have some idea, but you don't know who's going. You don't know what teams are going to do, what teams are jumping in front of you to take your guy. And so Jerry's right about that. The open-mindedness towards flexibility, really important.
And Jerry talked a lot about how, of course, the goal is to make your roster better in the NFL draft, but that he feels like the Cowboys are already better this season than last season because Dak Prescott is healthy.
Yeah.
How huge is that Prescott is going into this offseason and he's not rehabbing an injury?
At age 79, Jerry is still a very agile thinker.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a real good sales spin to say, because he's not arguing that they're as good roster-wise as they were 3 months ago, because that wouldn't be true. So whereas Steven comes out and says, we plan on getting better, we're going to get better, Jerry, very cleverly, because he wants you to love his Cowboys, he wants you to pay attention, he wants you to buy tickets, and I think he believes it, compares not to 3 months ago, but to 12 months ago, when Dak was rehabbing from surgery and no Micah Parsons was here. And he said, we didn't have Micah Parsons a year ago, and then look what happened. Does that mean that you're getting a Micah Parsons in this draft, or a C.D. Lamb, or a Trayvon Diggs, or as they've done so often in the first round around here, Byron Jones, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, Zeke Elliott, Des Bryant, Tyron Smith.
Wow, you've been here a while.
I'm old. Micah Parsons and C.D. Lamb. I mean, that's a pretty good decade of drafting first-round guys. Leighton Vander Esch in that group as well. That's a pretty good decade of talented guys.
Right.
So yes, their roster can get better if they hit in this draft.
Okay. You have been here more than anybody.
33 years going on.
33 years, that's a lot. Congratulations. What are you hearing as far as whispers when it comes to this draft, or maybe even just this offseason in general, as the Cowboys are starting their voluntary workouts?
Jerry mentioned in discussing the departure of Randy Gregory, how 2 is better than 1. And he was referring to the re-signing of Dorrance Armstrong and then to the signing of Dante Fowler from the Falcons. Fowler can do everything that Randy Gregory has done. In fact, Fowler's done more in his career. Dorrance Armstrong, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Jerry's saying it's better to have 2 than 1. Well, if you really believe that, then why were you trying so hard to sign Randy Gregory? The idea of doing Dorrance and Dante is the backup plan to having lost Randy Gregory. Jerry was very frank, by the way, in a sly way, of saying it was about availability. Your most important ability is availability, one of his favorite sayings. Referencing the fact is, I didn't want to take that language out of Randy's contract, referring to the substance abuse issue, because he's been here half a decade and he doesn't play very often because of the substance abuse program. That's fair and clever and sly, and maybe it's not dumb. But you know what's better? If 2 isn't better than 1, you know what is? 3. And I think the Cowboys somewhere in here, just because we keep talking about offensive line and wide receiver, that doesn't mean they won't take an edge rusher early on. They historically here, they love to collect edge rushers. They believe in having a lot of them. And then Dan Quinn, friend of the show, believes in rotating your defensive linemen anyway. And so somewhere in this draft is going to be somebody who can rush the passer.
Also, this draft is very strong when it comes to edge rushers.
Very much so, and it goes deep. Wide receiver goes deep as well. And so to somehow, of course, we talk about this good roster, and then we're going, and then you need a tight end. And a cornerback wouldn't hurt. And who couldn't always use a linebacker? And I bet you they draft a running back. Well, they do have, and a kicker comes up all the time.